We are especially honored to have the Secretary of the Air Force with us this evening. Secretary James wears many hats in her position as Secretary of the Air Force, which includes organizing, training, equipping, and providing for the welfare of nearly 660,000 active duty, Guard, Reserve, and civilian airmen and their families. The one all of us care about is her role relative to Civil Air Patrol. Secretary James became a quick study of CAP, and her concerted and ongoing efforts in support of our missions have been noticed and greatly appreciated by all Civil Air Patrol members nationwide. Thank you. We are pleased and honored with her presence here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Secretary of the United States Air Force, the Honorable Deborah Lee James.
Wow, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very, very much. Thank you, General Vasquez. Thank you, Ken Goss. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, Ken, I think, has done a fantastic job for all of us this evening. He's been thanking everybody else along the way. But I want to just take a moment and say thank you, Ken Goss, for your service to America, your service within the Civil Air Patrol, to our Air Force, and for making tonight such a fun and enjoyable evening for all of us. So thank you. Frank and I are so delighted to be here with all of you as we come together to show our support for the Civil Air Patrol, our Air Force auxiliary. And I also want to say it's a huge pleasure. I was here about 6 weeks ago as a tourist, but what a fantastic evening to be in this iconic location, the Udvar-Hazy Museum, a real monument to the history of American air power. It doesn't get much more inspiring than this. And indeed, as I have been sitting here in the front row listening to speaker after speaker and presentation after presentation, this is kind of a tough act for me to follow. It's been a real wow of an evening. We've had just great speakers. We've been hearing fantastic stories about 75 years of service, 75 years of history. I also want to give a shout out to our sponsors, to the members of Congress who are here tonight who have lent their support. Senator Harkin, thank you for your leadership for many, many years. And other members of Congress who are here with us as well, to Mrs. O'Malley, to General Becton, the other honorees. Your stories touch the hearts of all of us. They certainly touch my heart. And thank you so much for including me tonight. And please allow me, as a little bit perhaps of a capstone of a fantastic wow of an evening, to add just a little bit more color, perhaps a few more stories as we come together to celebrate both the history and, even more importantly, the future of our Civil Air Patrol. As you well know, the Civil Air Patrol was founded 75 years ago. It was by order of our president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and the original idea was to organize tens of thousands of flying enthusiasts into a force that could help protect the homeland. And boy, was he ever prescient, because he took this action just 1 week before what became the attack upon Pearl Harbor. So today, I think so many of us, as we think back to the World War II era, and most of us know it by history books, some of us know it from firsthand experience, but many of us by history books, sometimes we only remember and we focus on the contributions of the people who went over there and fought the war. Sometimes I think we tend to overlook the important people who perform civil and homeland defense work right here close to our shores, right here close to home. We forget sometimes, and we mustn't let that happen for future generations. And I think that's in part because we have felt relatively safe here in the homeland, United States of America, for so long, and we forget, as we try to think back, just how much of an immediate threat it felt in the United States during those last weeks of 1941. But you know what? those original members of the Civil Air Patrol, they knew exactly what was going on, and they didn't forget. They knew exactly what they had to do. And they earned their motto early on, Semper Vigilans, which is always vigilant. They learned it from the beginning, and they have been serving it through and through for 75 years. So by way of background, at the dawn of World War II, President Roosevelt called the United States of America the arsenal of democracy. And that arsenal required millions of gallons of oil and tons of supplies of fuel to be brought across the Atlantic. It was the most impressive economic transformation in human history. All of this we were trying to supply at this time to Europe. Well, you know what? The Germans knew exactly what we were trying to do, and they wanted to defeat us in that effort. They wanted to strangle our economy and force us to use our United States Navy to guard shipping close to our shores, near the coast, rather than being able to protect convoys that were trying to cross the Atlantic to get to Europe. But you know what the Germans in those early days didn't count upon? They didn't count on the Civil Air Patrol. Because you see, the CAP patrols escorted more than 5,000 convoys back then. They reported on 173 U-boats that were endangering our ships, and they, in fact, attacked 53 of them. Not to mention, they spotted more than 350 survivors in the water. They pinpointed them for search and rescue. So by 1943, the Civil Air Patrol was so successful in their missions that they were able to actually suspend their coastal patrol missions because, you see, the German U-boats, they basically gave up the ghost. They figured they could not hide from those eyes in the sky, and so they simply retreated to the mid-Atlantic. So as far as I'm concerned, this close-to-home effort was the first campaign of the Battle of the Atlantic, and CAP members scored the first big victory that then allowed our Army Air Corps, our U.S. Navy, and our allies, and in particularly Canada and Great Britain, to then win the successive follow-on decisive battles that became so important for the ultimate victory in World War II. So you see from those early days, the Civil Air Patrol, extremely important work that they were performing. And by the way, I want to come back to the search and rescue and emergency transport missions that they have been flying since those early days and that they continue to fly today. Now, there's some noteworthy stories. You've heard some tonight. Let me foot stomp a few. First, from the first generation of CAP pilots, the first generation of our CAP. You heard a little bit about the contributions of Colonel Gail Halvorsen. I'm sorry that he is not here tonight, I believe, but of course he joined the Utah wing of the Civil Air Patrol in 1941, eventually in 1943 joined the regular Army Air Corps. He then stayed in the Air Force after the end of the war, and many of us will remember him best as one of the pilots who dropped supplies to the Soviet-besieged West Berlin during the Berlin airlift crisis. And he earned from that period of time the nickname of the Candy Bomber. And you see, he made tiny parachutes which brought packs of gum and candy that were special airdrops that were given essentially to the children of West Berlin, who at that time were starving and very scarred by the war. Another amazing thing about the first generation of the Civil Air Patrol is how open they were, given that we were quite a closed society back then, but how open they were to people of different types of background, different types of Americans. Senator Harkin's remarks called this out, I think, very, very well. By 1944, a quarter of the members of the Civil Air Patrol were women. And just like Rosie the Riveter, these women answered the call to serve. And CAP included African Americans at a time when the military was still completely segregated. So Willa Brown, there's a name that will live on in history. She was the first African American woman to earn a pilot's license. She pinned on her lieutenant's bars as a member of the Civil Air Patrol in 1942. And then she and her husband also set up the training program that provided the instructors for the Tuskegee Airmen. So again, we will forever recognize her pioneering work that led ultimately to the integration of the United States Air Force. And General Leon Johnson, it's always a pleasure to see you, your leadership role with the Tuskegee Airmen as well as with the Civil Air Patrol. So thank you, sir. We salute you. And one more story from the early years. It's a story that carries through to the present day. I have met, I think, my new personal hero here tonight. Her name is Carolyn Gherkin, and she is one of the early cadets of the Civil Air Patrol. She has flown as an observer for the search and rescue mission, get this, ever since the year 1942, and she continues to fly today. So if I've done my math correctly, Carolyn has been taken to the skies for search and rescue for 74 years. And so Carolyn, I just want to say, where are you, Carolyn? Stand up. Carolyn, I just want to say, if I ever get in a pinch, and if I'm ever lost, and if I'm ever in great, great need, I just hope you're in the skies searching for me, baby, okay? So thank you so much, Carolyn. All right, so those were the early days. Let's flash forward a little bit more to the future. Of course, today the Civil Air Patrol is still up there. They are still flying missions to protect the homeland and safeguard American lives 75 years later. And boy, oh boy, did I learn about this big time when I had the opportunity to visit the CAP National Headquarters, which is at Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama. I was there last May. I got to visit with some of the cadets who were on scene there, the operations and the aerospace education teams, and of course I also met with Major General Vasquez and his leadership team. And here are my key takeaways. And by the way, I would charge all of you here this evening to help me and help General Goldfein, our Chief of Staff of the Air Force, spread the important news about the Civil Air Patrol. And here's what I learned. From coast to coast, to Alaska and Hawaii, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands, CAP pilots today are conducting life-saving search and rescue missions, and they're performing critical medical transports. Last year, CAP members flew search and rescue missions that saved 92 lives, and in fact, in the last 2 months alone, they saved 13 lives. They have become, yes, give them a hand of applause on that. And over time, they just keep getting better and better and leveraging technology, leveraging innovations. So for example, they've become even more efficient at this mission because of the innovative National Cell Phone Forensics Team. So the airmen who are involved with this mission work with the Air Force Rescue Coordination Center to locate missing persons by analyzing cell phone records to pinpoint their search efforts. And nowhere is their dedication to service more clearly on display than in the aftermath of disasters. Now, some of the previous speakers have talked about this as well. This ranges from everything from the aftermath of the attacks on America, September 11th, 2001. After Hurricane Sandy, of course, CAP members flew almost 700 missions, assisting local and federal disaster relief agencies to reach hard-hit communities and saving lives. Now, I gotta tell you, I'm a Jersey girl. I'm from the state of New Jersey. I have a 92-year-old mother who still lives there. My sister is in New Jersey, and I have 2 children who live in New York City. So the stories that I'm telling you speak to me in my heart. And I could go on and on because there have been disasters all across America, and the Civil Air Patrol has always been there for us. So the bottom line here is that Civil Air Patrol is a central part of our national disaster relief and recovery plan, precisely because they do have the capabilities and the training to make sure that people in need get relief as fast as possible. And oh, by the way, did I mention, because I do work a lot on budgets and I do work a lot with our Congress, they're a great buy for the taxpayer, people, so let's get on board. Now, in addition to all that, if that's not enough, over the last 65 years, CAP has played an important role inspiring young people. How important is that? Inspiring our young people to pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, and math career fields, we call it STEM, as well as in teaching aerospace education to the next generation of young people. So I don't know about you, but I think the way the world is changing nowadays, pretty soon there won't be any career fields that don't require at least some familiarity with STEM. So I would submit to you that CAP is playing an important role laying the groundwork for our future economy as well as our future security, in that they are sensitizing young people to these important career areas. Now, there's another part of CAP that hasn't been talked about tonight. It's called the Cadet Encampment Assistance Program. This is where we have young people. We have young people from low-income families that are getting tuition and uniform assistance in order to come and attend CAP programs. Now, as of this past summer, we've had more than 3,000 cadets that have been part of this program. They've been helped by the Cadet Encampment Assistance Program. And of course, after participating, there are surveys taken, and 95% of these young people feel after the fact that, wow, it's important that I be a part of helping my country, and nearly 80% of them express interest in military and aviation careers. Now, as Secretary of the Air Force, I am very interested in those statistics. That's good news for me. And by the way, whether these young people ever go on to serve in the military or not, there's just no question in my mind that CAP and what they have learned from CAP, they are walking away from it with important life skills like leadership training and coming to believe in civic responsibility and demonstrating integrity, service, and excellence, which, by the way, are our 3 core values in the Air Force. So these are important lessons learned regardless of what careers these young people go on to pursue. And speaking of young people, I spoke about the young at heart, like Carolyn, but let me also call out one other Civil Air Patrol cadet. It's a young cadet named Evan Thompson, who was my dinner mate tonight. So Evan is chairman of the Cadet Advisory Council, which means he advises General Vasquez and the leadership team on matters that are important to the cadets, to how to improve the program. These are the matters that are important to cadets. He is about to graduate college, and no, he hasn't been in for 3.5 years. He will have been in 1.5 years when he graduates, because he had all these extra credits coming in. He's applying to law school. He has a private pilot's license. And if I were you, keep your eye on him 25 years from now, because he's going to be the President of the United States, is what I'm thinking. So congratulations, Evan. All right, just one more story here. So we've talked about all sorts of stories from the past, some from today. Here's just one other area from today. And that is that CAP wings from around the country are participating in programs like Cyber Patriot and the National Youth Cyber Education Program. Now, in these competitions, what happens is they take on the role of protecting networks and systems from cyber attacks and from vulnerabilities. And once again, if you just pick up your morning news and watch what's going on in the world in 2016, I think you'll agree with me that we need more young people who have these sorts of critical skills in the area of cyber protection. It is so important for government. It is so important for industry that we grow this talent. So the CAP students and cadets also compete for scholarships that allow them to continue their studies in college in hands-on fields like engineering and aerospace medicine that, of course, our Air Force relies on. So it is true that many of the cadets in CAP eventually go on to take that oath of service to serve their country in uniform, which is a fantastic reflection, I think, on the quality of the education, both the technical as well as the moral education that they receive in CAP. And oh, by the way, the fact that many of them come from diverse backgrounds is just a big plus for us. And I think it's a big plus for corporations across America as well. Because I know, and I know many of you know as well, that people from diverse backgrounds who come together, who solve problems and come at problems from different perspectives, from there is what springs great innovation. And we certainly need that innovation going forward in our military. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is just what I consider to be a short list of the important things that the Civil Air Patrol is doing and has been doing really throughout its 75-year history. I could go on, but I think you get the picture. All of the people that CAP helps through aerospace education and cadet programs, emergency services, and the agile, innovative ways that the CAP goes after problems makes CAP a very, very valuable member of your and my total force team. And that is precisely why General Welsh and I, back in 2015, officially made the Civil Air Patrol what it really already was, but we made it official. And that is, we made the Civil Air Patrol part of our total Air Force. It was long overdue, but well done. So, thank you, Civil Air Patrol, for helping us perform some of our most important missions for the United States of America: protecting the homeland, safeguarding American lives, and investing, very importantly, in the next generation of young people to carry on the legacy that you all have built. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in one final but robust round of applause in gratitude to the Civil Air Patrol. Happy birthday, and aim high, Airmen, aim high.